that's kind of worked for me. Like when I first started doing piano gigs, I really didn't know anything. I knew about 3 songs and 2 voicings and maybe 3 licks in my right hand. But I started getting gigs because from listening to records, I had a pretty good sense of time, and that's what people gravitated towards. So they were willing to overlook the fact that I had very little skill. You know, I played catch-up over the course of many years, but yeah, what are some ways that we can develop? Am I overlapping you on that?
No, no.
Like
we're going to overlap everything.
How can we develop? What are ways to develop good time?
Play with recording me a million times.
That's one way. But what happens when you have to turn it off? Yeah.
You gotta use the metronome, but you can't use it on all the quarter notes because then your time doesn't get better. I found out.
Okay.
Gotta make it so you're playing at half notes, or you're playing so like there's a bar time and a bar no time, or 4 bars a time, no time for 4 bars. Like that makes your time better, not just like because if you play just quarter notes with it, you're just like relying on that.
I think that what?
You could have gone the offbeat.
You could put it on 2 and 4. Yeah. Now there's having consistent time, and then there's having a good feel. You know, like for example, there's I noticed this particularly with certain types of drummers. Like there's certain types of drummers that play like funk really well, but they don't necessarily play swing well, and that's more of a feel thing. Even though they might have really metronomic time. Like there's one drummer in particular I'm thinking of who his time is so good that you could almost set the metronome to him. You know, it's like scary good. Like you listen to the tune at the beginning and at the end, and it's sick how perfect it is. Like exactly what you're talking about with this. It's even more. But it doesn't necessarily have that jazz feel. And I think that when we talk about feel is not necessarily metronomic. You know what I mean? And I think particularly jazz. I think there's somewhat of a play with it. You know? So that's why playing with records is really good. And then also playing with other people. And the thing that you add playing with other people is that you learn how to play and listen. I know those of you who go to school here have probably heard me say this a million times, but like I think that's one of the most overlooked things as developing jazz musicians, that we tend to just get into a box of listening to ourselves or being worried about ourselves, and the more you can let go of that and get into this, it's kind of a, I want to say counterpoint, but it's kind of like I hate to say split brain, but you know, if you can concentrate on 2 things at once, if you can watch a movie and text at the same time, which now apparently phones can do, you know, then you can do this, and that is to play and listen to your bandmates, you know. That's worked for me as well. It's helped me to be more consistent playing with others. For example, if something does go wrong, we've seen that once today or twice, you know, then it's easier to get back because you can communicate. I mean, it's sort of like what tends to happen is like, I guess, let's say you and I were having a conversation, and let's say we were talking about ice cream, and somehow you sort of went off on a tangent on how the manufacturing of ice cream is ruining the ecosystem, you know, and then you start talking about like, you know, global warming or something, and so you went on this other tangent, whereas meanwhile I'm sort of still talking about like, well, I like strawberries, you know, I had a banana split the other day, it was really tasty. So we've gone in different, it's like we're not listening to each other. You know what I mean?
What?
Like I said, that's what happens if you play and don't listen. You know, you're not having a conversation. It's almost like don't know how many people here remember the show Seinfeld. Now I'm really feeling old, but you know, the thing that was really on point about Seinfeld in terms of people who live in New York is that you talk to New Yorkers, you could go to a diner and be talking to each other, but this happened a lot in the show. Like later on, they would have George would just be talking about whatever was bothering him. Jerry would be talking about whatever was bothering him. They're not talking to each other. They're just venting in the same vicinity. You know what I mean? So my point is that we have to learn how to listen and play at the same time. You know, and I think that goes for any music, but it definitely goes for jazz. You have to do it, because otherwise it's just, what's the point? You know, it's a conversation. All right, so now that we've gone off on a tangent. So we listen to the original recording. We don't have time to listen to another version, but there's a million other versions. Apparently there's one with Tony Williams taking the solo out front. So then we have to read the melody. Now most people here have at least played recording A, so I don't know if anybody here, who here would be sight reading recording A for the first time? Okay. So how do you approach sight reading? What do you start with?
Listening to the recording.
What?
Listening to that.
Well, let's say that you could. We've already listened to a recording, but now let's put the recording aside. So you just have to read it.
Reading the melody. Singing it. Find the key first.
Singing. Find the key.
Whoa.
Well, how about look at key signature, look at time signature, accidentals. Look for trouble spots.
Rhythmic figures.
Yeah, exactly. And there's kind of two ways you can approach sight reading. Like, you can play it out of time, very slowly, and just try to get all the notes and fingerings on your instrument. Then you can maybe set a slow, consistent tempo, and then try to, don't worry about missing the notes, just try to keep the tempo. You know, that's two different ways. Okay, so then number 4 is let's pick apart the chords. So just ignore the, does everybody have the chart in front of them? Just the chart, the regular chart, not this solo that I wrote. But you want to pick apart the chords. So let's just take the basic. Now, I wanted to mention this before because I think this could have averted, well, this can always avert what I'm talking about with getting lost or sort of musicians being in different places. It says if you know the root movement, you know, you should be able to get back on. You know, so in this case, let's start with that's just 4 bars of that. A, and then C, ba, and then ba, 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 ba. So that's something you should be able to do. I mean, in addition to name the letter names of the groups, you can start there. And if you play a horn, you can play it on your horn, you know. B, recognizable progressions. So are there any recognizable progressions in the song? It's basically all 2-5-1s, right? So I mean, this is structurally this is a pretty simple tune. You know, so I think that finding the recognizable progressions, that and analyzing tunes numerically makes it much easier to memorize. How many people have this tune memorized? Okay. How many people think they would be able to memorize it after practicing it? Okay. So yeah, I mean, and a lot of it, at least the chords, you know. But I think the melody too. You know. Let's see, arpeggiate or voice the chords. So just in root position, A minor 6, C minor 6. And then we have our 2 5s. might want to, again, thinking still in root position, but maybe add some extensions. So I'm adding the 9th and the 11th. Or I could just think of the whole thing as a 13. And then same for the next chord. And then instead of just thinking 7th chords, I could think 9ths, and now I'll just voice it more in a pianistic way. And if you don't play a chordal instrument, you could arpeggiate all that. So then the next step would be figure out the chord scales, which again, this is pretty basic. But so what would be a chord scale for the first 2 chords? Dorian. Okay, that's fine. What's another scale we could use?
Melodic minor.
Melodic minor ascending. What's another one?
You could throw in harmonic minor.
What?
You could throw in harmonic minor.
I always like harmonic minor. What's another one?
Pentatonic minor.
What?
Minor pentatonic.
Minor pentatonic. Okay. That? Okay, what's another one? Yes?
Use D dominant.
D dot. Well, yeah, that's so D mixolydian.
Sure.
That's the same as A Dorian.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you could think of it that way. This is a different starting point, you know. Somebody who works with Herbie Hancock told me that when he sees sus chords, that if he sees, like if it was something like this, and it's funny because this tune is almost like this. The first part of it, if you made it into sus, it's almost the same as. You know what I mean? Same scales. You know that tune? What tune is that?
Maiden Voyage.
Maiden Voyage, right. Same scales.
So you can use melodic minor ascending and Dorian over sus. You're saying?
Well, I'm going off on a tangent. But what I was going to say is that Herbie, like when he sees sus chords, he thinks minor. So he always thinks the reverse of what you just said. You know, so there's no reason why you couldn't also think that way.
So if he saw D sus, he would think A Dorian.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I've been told. I never asked him myself. That should have been a question.
Say
that
he
he,
thinks
Is it kind of an extension off of just like, you know, doing a triad off of one of the chord tones or something like that, basically? And it's
Sure.
same school of thought, right?
Sure.
So you said if he thinks it's D sus,
If the chord written is
D
D
sus,
sus,
and
he's going to think A minor.
A minor,
Yeah.
and you said Dorian.
Yeah.
Well, A Dorian,
So-
A minor, yeah.
So you use those 2 words interchangeably?
For now. Well, yeah, sure.
So you say Aeolian from you.
Oh, no, not Aeolian. Oh, Aeolian would that, well, that's
I mean, you say Aeolian instead of when I would say minor. Is what I'm
Aeolian is natural minor.
So what do you? So you would say Dorian is the same as minor.
In
I have
this-
this argument with students all the time, and that's why I'm just asking. I'm just asking from here.
Well, the problem with that is, especially if we're thinking D sus, right?
Right, no, I agree. D sus, so that's the same as D mixolydian. It's the same as A Dorian.
Yes.
But I mean, I'm just wondering. I'm asking this. Because when
Maybe
people say
because
to me A minor,
Oh,
to me that means A minor. right? But that's what this is.
So when you think A minor,
I'm talking about Aeolian. I'm talking about the key of A minor. The scale that
why,
would go
why,
with
do
the key
you,
of A minor.
why do you think that?
Because that's the key, that would refer to the key of A minor, you play the scale A minor. So if you say the word A minor, you mean minor. If you say Dorian, you're speaking about a mode. I get in this with students, so that's why I want to...
So he wants to get in it with you now.
You're right.
No, I don't, but I just wonder, I mean...
In this case, well, because the first, in this song,
Right,
it's
A
A minor
Dorian.
6.
Right, and we play the A Dorian mode.
It has to be Dorian.
Right.
I mean, within reason, I'm into anything.
I'm just asking what the, but I just want to know about the name of the scale. I've wondered about this because people say, oh, I was at college and they said, oh yeah, when they say minor that means Dorian, and I always say, no, it doesn't.